real pleasure for me as a longtime fan to be sitting here with Aaron Gray.
Here with Larry Hama.
We're talking with Kevin J. Anderson, best-selling author.
Mr. Neil Adams.
I am here with David Britt.
Axel Alonso, editor.
Fan Days and Dallas Comic Con with John
King.
Kevin Conroy.
Free comic book day.
Denise Crosby.
McKenna Talley here on location at Star Wars Celebration.
Expo, talking for our second time with Gil Gerard.
Wichita, Kansas at Time Eddie.
Producer David Gerald.
I've got Eric Flint.
Are here at Smallville Comic Con.
Wizard World St. Louis.
GlitchCon in Bentonville, Arkansas.
WorldCon 74, we are talking with Alan Dean Foster.
We are
Author
talking
Charlene Harris.
Quincy Allen.
Suzanne Lambert.
Len Wein.
Chris Sami.
Ashley Eckstein. Mano Incarami. Jason Aaron.
This is Sci-Fi for Me, your portal to the science fiction multiverse.
And good evening, everybody. I am R.J. Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Logistics, Myopic Proofreader for Critical Blast Publishing, and yes, we will help you with your crowdfunder data through Critical Blast Consulting and my 35 years of experience as a data scientist. Tonight, it is Blast from the Bunker when Critical Blast teams up with our good friends.
My name is Jason Hutt. I am the editor here at sci-fi4me.com. and Sci-Fi for Me TV. Glad to have all of you with us. Our 8th collaboration, our 8th episode. So, and I'm hoping, if everything works right, that we'll be able to pull in chat from both. Yes, we will chat. So this is the Elk of Antioch coming in on the chat over on RJ's channel because we are simulcasting to both Sci-Fi for Me TV on YouTube and Critical Blast TV on YouTube, as well
all your
as
picture boxes
and Odyssey and Rumble. So, all right, now that's out of the way. All the stuff's out of the way. I'll let you do the heavy lifting.
Well, the heavy lifting is we frequently get together and talk about UFOs, UAPs, the phenomena of aliens, and Jason, I'll if I'm talking out of school, I'll apologize here, but it was interesting to me that we finished up one of them and we had an after-show conversation, just you and I, about UFOs, and you said you don't believe in them. And I was like, you're the sci-fi guy. How can you not believe in UFOs? I'm just the pop culture guy.
Yeah.
And can you tell us? Would you tell us again what you told me?
Well, it's been a while since we had that conversation, but it's more of a faith thing, and actually that kind of leans into what we're talking about here tonight with our guest.
Exactly.
I'm of the opinion that out of all of everything that we've seen created in the universe, I don't know that there's any other extraterrestrial life. Now, that's not to say that humans are the only life out there, because there are angels and demons and principalities and powers beyond our knowledge and understanding. The Bible does talk about that. But this kind of goes into our topic for tonight, because John Milor is joining us, and
Chief Master Sergeant. Let's throw that in there.
He's got a new book out called Christian UFOlogy. If I'm pronouncing that right, ufology, is that how we say it? And yes. John, this is an interesting take on things, with this idea that you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're basically saying that you can find proof of UFOs in Scripture. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've got my NIV study Bible that I've had since I was 17 years old. I'm ready. I've got the concordance. Let's go.
I've got my KJV Bible that I've had drilled into my head since I was 7. So,
Cam says Nephilim spaceships. So, all right. So, John,
Okay.
John, make your case. What is this book about, and how did you come up with this idea here?
Okay. So this is a compilation. It's actually the second edition of Aliens and the Antichrist. So it's close to 30 years of research. First 21 years of my life, I was reading, immersed in the paranormal, researching, and later even experimenting with all kinds of paranormal things. I was a Christian. I would have said I was. However, I didn't know really basic things like the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Trinity? The fact that the Bible straight up says in numerous places that the universe and everything in it and all life as we know it were created through Jesus.
Right.
I knew Jesus was the Son of God. I didn't know that he was actually God. Him and his Father are one. So the whole idea of the Trinity is something totally lost on me. I probably would have said that there was something to this whole evolution thing, that the account of creation in the Bible and evolution are somehow some sort of composite of those two. So a lot of people that are actual, solid Christians probably would have questioned whether I really was a Christian or not. I was as liberal as all get out. Pro-abortion and everything, all the talking points that are liberal that you could say, I was down the line, diehard liberal. So a lot of Christians, again, would have said, this guy says he's a Christian, but he's a Christian in name only, right? Then I had an encounter with Jesus when I was 21 years old, and it was a profound, very personal encounter. Jesus actually revealed himself to me. He came to me in a dream, showed me all these different things that were going on in my life that were out of whack. And basically, he showed me that if I didn't change, my age of accountability was coming to an end, and I was in for some serious surprises, very harsh consequences if I didn't change everything I was doing immediately. So I remember in the dream, the person who was with me in the dream was invisible. I couldn't see him. I could see that he was moving things, but it was a really puzzling conundrum because when I woke up and I sat on my bed and I'm recalling all of the scenes, vivid imagery and stuff from the dream, I was like, I got to the part where there was the invisible person, and I was talking to myself. I said, who is that invisible person? And my question was literally answered verbally in my ear. Jesus. I heard the name Jesus spoke in my ear, and it floored me. I mean, literally, I fell out of the bed on the floor. I felt all of his love and his presence, like he was like there in my room, literally in person. And I felt all this love just saturating me in all of these waves of just incomprehensible love, intoxicating beyond your wildest imagination. So this woke me up in terms of the reality of who Jesus was and the fact that he actually visits people in person from time to time. And now there's a story of faith in my family that goes back to my great grandparents. I was taken to their house when I was a little kid. Me and my brother would be taken there from time to time, and they were fervent believers. My great grandfather was a minister, and during the Great Depression, they traveled all over the United States, living out of their car, going from town to town, doing these big tent revivals and all of this stuff. So they were all about Jesus, completely immersed. You go into the house, if the TV's on, it's an evangelist. If the radio's playing, it's gospel music. They had all the friends. They were all connected in the church. They had prayer ministry affiliated with a church, and then that was just their total life. So I had, that's where I, primarily why I would have said I was a believer, because staying with my grandmother, she always talked about Jesus. She read, these stories, Daniel and the Lion's Den, David and Goliath and whatnot. So as far as a little kid can kind of understand God, I had that little bit, those seeds, but that's about it. My mom was a hippie. I live with my mom. My parents divorced from the 60s, the free love movement and all of that, just like
Right.
the family blew up. And I had this kind of weird, convoluted childhood, but one of the things that was consistent was my desire to understand the greater reality. My great grandmother was a mystic in her conception of God and view of the universe and everything. She was a Pentecostal, believed in all of the spiritual gifts and all of those things, and she had different stories. One time she said she was saved by an angel. She was dying in her bedroom, choking to death from carbon monoxide poisoning, and prayed to God to save her. And she said someone walked into her room and rolled her over. And the interesting thing is, he wasn't what you would consider an angel to be looking like. He was a military guy. He had some kind of unusual military uniform on, and he had a pickle hob helmet. So this is a helmet with a spike on top.
Yeah.
And so interesting, very specific recollection she had and description of this angel. But then as soon as he rolled her over and saw she was okay, he walked out. So she immediately got out of bed and walked into the living room, and the door was shut with a chain across the door from the inside. So how do you do that? How do you pop in and just disappear in response to a prayer? So she said he had to be an angel, but just unusual looking. And another story she had, she too encountered Jesus personally. When she was like in her 50s or 60s, she had a stroke that almost killed her. And she was paralyzed on the left side of her body, couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't move any part of her left side of her body. And the doctors didn't know how long, or if she would recover.
Mm-hmm.
She said Jesus walked into her hospital room, smiled at her, and boom, instantly healed. And he turned around and walked out. When the doctors came in, she's like sitting there waiting to go home and talking, and then everything checked out, and they were like shocked. So I remember hearing that story when I was a kid. And so I was like, wow, so Jesus, he's real. I just accepted it. I just believed it. And then, of course, he showed up to me when I was not looking for him, when it was probably the darkest time in my life at 21 years old. So you put that part of my life, reoriented me to shift back to my faith, my original faith, right?
Right.
But between 5 years old and 21, a lot happened. So at 5 years old, I was at my great grandmother's house during a family gathering. It was like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something. There were a lot of family members there. People having different conversations all around in the living room, and grandma's sitting on the couch reading a newspaper. And she suddenly drops the newspaper and says, "Okay, everybody, I have a family announcement to make. Everybody stop talking and listen." She starts to read this newspaper article about a wild goose chase between some UFOs and a police car in the outskirts of Madera County. And they're racing all over the place chasing these UFOs. And then they zip off up into the sky. And I remember I was 5 years old. This was 1975. And the description she gave matched that opening scene of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, if you can recall it.
Right.
It's to the letter, pretty much. And after she read this article, I remember looking around and everybody's faces were like kind of puzzled, like, why is Grandma reading this UFO story? I mean, this is totally not in her realm. Mixing metaphors here. So, Grandma then proceeds to tell a story that when she was a little girl, she saw a UFO. She and her sister were out on the, plains of Kentucky. They lived in the middle of nowhere around the turn of the century at that time. Neither of them had never even seen an automobile before. They had a wagon. So they were disconnected from like modern civilization. And they were out there just walking along and they saw this cigar-shaped UFO cruise by right in front of them. It was only about 30 feet away, really low to the ground, and it just zoomed right on past. They said it was going kind of slow. It was the shape of a cigar. It had an aluminum color to it, and seamless, no rivets, no nothing. And it had some kind of a transparent bubble on top. And they were so close, they even saw the occupant, and he turned his head and looked at him as he went by. So
I want to ask you, did he wave? But
yeah, unfortunately, I was only 5, so I didn't start hitting her up with, did he look like a normal human being, or were his eyes a little unusually large? I have a whole bunch of questions I could ask her now, but I was only 5. This is the first time I heard it, and she said it cruised right by, and it got to these bluffs, and then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared instantly. And her and her sister were like shocked. They had no frame of reference. How do you describe this? So they ran home. They told their mom, and their mom told them, never, under any circumstances, ever tell anyone that story ever again.
Now,
they were kind of puzzled, like why, but yeah.
Did they live anywhere near a military base?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
This is like 1900.
we're talking 1900.
Right? So,
they're not even automobiles yet.
Yeah. So you might have had some. I don't know. There might have been an automobile or two in prototype or whatever. That was a long, long time ago. And if you Google around, you could probably find some examples of people experimenting with some kind of winged flight or something. But to see a contraption like that with anti-gravity technology just hovering along, nobody really conceived of anything like that. And we don't even have anything like that now. It didn't have wings on it or anything. So, at least as far as publicly releasable technology.
Yeah. So this got you started on the trajectory of investigating this stuff. Where did that happen?
It started at 5, honestly. I was hitting my mom up with millions of questions on the way home, and so she just used Star Trek, because we watch Star Trek all the time. And she said, Star Trek, well, it's probably kind of real, So in my young mind, I was like, okay, Grandma's reality, that's real, and this otherworldly ET reality, that's real too, and it only makes sense. I look out at the stars. It always made sense to me there had to be life out there. You can't have all of that empty. That's wasteful and kind of silly, especially if you know exactly how vast an estimated 77 septillion solar systems with associated planets, how big that really is.
Right.
That is incomprehensibly big. Honestly, I think if you were to go out and onto a beach and pick up a single grain of sand, that the number of stars we have out there that we know about would be more grains of sand than this entire planet. So it's incomprehensibly vast, the cosmos. And I just thought, it's got to be something out there. And my mom was the kind of person that didn't really get annoyed by excessive questions, because I would drive other people nuts. I was the kind of kid that would be like, why? And then they'd give an answer and I'd be like, why? And they give an answer. Why? Why? Let's go to the root cause. Let's go to the, and it would end up, because God made it that way. So shut up. Because, I just wouldn't quit. I wanted to know more and more and more and more. And when it came to unknown things, they were mysterious and then especially attracted my attention. And my sister was kind of a nut about paranormal type things. There was a house down the street from us that was supposedly haunted, and she would always fantasize about, when I die, I want to be a ghost, and I want to haunt a house, and she just always had these bizarre ideas and was into anything that was kind of unknown. And that rubbed off on me. And we watched shows like In Search Of, with Leonard Nimoy narrating. And so since I had so many questions and stuff, my mom bought a subscription to Reader's Digest, Mysteries of the Unknown. And it was this multi-volume set. I think it was 24 volumes. So it's just a huge collection of books that would show up. One would show up every month or so. And even at like 5, 6 years old, I'm reading these books. And by the time I'm like 7, 8, 9, I had all this stuff memorized. I could tell you about psychometry and palm reading and tarot cards and casting runes and all these cryptids, Bigfoot, Chupacabra. But I also knew about phenomenon, PSI, tarot card, or, clairvoyance, you name it.
Yeah, but it's quite a leap to go from that to this. All this stuff is in the Bible. How did you come to that conclusion? Where was your studies for that?
My journey went from research to experimentation, so that I've started confirming, yes, there's definitely something supernatural here. Like certain things, hypnosis, I was able to rule out using scientific method, like, okay, hypersuggestibility. Yeah, people can be programmed to believe that they've had past lives and different things like that. You can verify, right?
Right.
And being an academic that I was, and I've been in school for a long time, I have 2 master's degrees, a bachelor degree, and 2 associate degrees. So I know how to study, I know how to do research, and I would really dig into stuff and look at all the sides of it. But the whole theological aspect came to life for me when I was 21 years old. I got out of the active duty Army, and I had that encounter with Jesus in that dream. And I woke up, and then I heard him audibly speak in my ear, and I'm like, he's no kidding real. He's not an abstract idea. That alone totally made me just want to look at the Bible right off the bat that day. I'm like, I have to start reading the Bible because it's real. And whatever the Bible says, that's my new foundation on reality. And I'm going to stop just throwing things out because I think that they're not right. I didn't understand, and so I started reading, and right away, the book of Genesis, it didn't take long for me to discover that the Bible's the most paranormal book I've ever read. And I'm reading all of these things, and I get only to Genesis chapter 6. So it's just a couple chapters in, maybe 2, 3 pages in. I'm reading about angels coming down to earth, mating with humans, and having children that were giants, that were incredibly evil. So these were fallen angels that were disobeying God.
Right.
To do this. But right away, I'm like, hold on, let me write a note down. I didn't think angels were physical beings. These are seriously physical. And my rational, analytical mind is saying, first of all, why were they attracted to women? And anybody that I asked questions about that were Christian would be like, they were just disobedient to God and whatnot. And I'm like, no. Biologically, this makes 0 sense.
Especially when later on
that
the
would
Bible
be
we're
like,
told that they're genderless.
Well,
they're not.
Yeah, but see, the thing about it is, though, if God made man and God made man and woman is made to bear children, then it follows that if I'm a fallen angel and I'm going to perpetuate the species, then I have to assume male form in order to beget children and offspring. So it's not that much of a leap of logic to see how they would go about assuming male form.
Okay. To be a single gender as a species, biologically speaking, to me is a ridiculous notion. You're not going to create a species with one gender that is incapable of reproducing. And in fact, when you really start looking at the Bible, there's these assumptions, and I started making a list of them, assumptions that God made angels genderless. It doesn't say that in the Bible anywhere. In fact, it doesn't talk about God creating the angels. It very vaguely just, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. And then when you read about the angels, you read that they existed before humanity, Job 38. The stars of God sang for glory to God in this perfect existence before there was sin. So there's all of this. But then it occurred to me that there is an explanation as to how these angels both could have come about, their origin story. And it also explains why they would be attracted to women if they reverted to a former form that they were familiar with. So look at Adam and Eve. Consider Adam and Eve. They were created. They were a reproductive species, and yet they were perfect and had not sinned yet.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen to us in the future? If we're redeemed, we go through a metamorphosis. The Bible refers to this as a translation where we become like the angels.
Right.
That's in Luke 20:36. Jesus said, "You'll become like the angels, which neither marry nor are they given in marriage." So humans are capable of sexual reproduction now. After we translate, we will no longer reproduce. It will no longer be in our nature to reproduce. We'll be connected to God on a higher level, and we'll be like butterflies. We'll go through this spiritual metamorphosis. And I have this theory, I call it the butterfly theory, that God created all the species that are advanced, that are in his image, that are the highest life forms, to reach an age of spiritual maturity whereby they would translate into this higher immortal nature and no longer reproduce. But before that translation, they'll be like Adam and Eve, reproducing after their own kind. And according to this theory, the cosmos is planted with life all throughout. There were all kinds of Adam and Eves out there, and a lot of them said no to Satan when he showed up and tried to deceive them. They continued to advance. Their populations covered their planets, and then they spread throughout the cosmos. Some of them are still like Adam and Eve, reproducing after their own kind, but they are still sinless, yet mortal beings depending on something like the tree of life to eat, to maintain their life. But once they get to translation and they reach that maturity, then they translate into this highest form. Angel is actually a title. It's not species, it's a title. And the beings that have attained that are beings that are translated. So they reach that highest level. They have abilities. And, can they still reproduce? Yes. Because to create a temporary body is another one of those biological things. Why go through all the trouble to create something that is so sophisticated that down to the atomic level has DNA that's compatible with humans, and to try to have children and all of that? I think it's a lot more plausible that if you look at Adam and Eve and the trajectory of humanity, that angels went through exactly what we went through, except they didn't sin and they translated into angels. So you have these beings out there that are fully immortal and they live on fully populated planets. They reproduce after their own kind. And it makes more sense to me like that, because look at all the species we have here on Earth. They all reproduce. God did not handcraft any of them unless you're talking about the very first ones. Those were handcrafted, but then the rest reproduced.
Right.
Nowhere in the Bible does it say every angel, which are innumerable, were all handcrafted. It doesn't make any sense. God is a conservationist. He creates, and then once he has something, then he cuts it loose. Even with Adam and Eve, he created Adam, then he took a rib out of Adam to create Eve with it. So, he even took that little shortcut right there when he's creating the human species. So it only makes sense.
He did wait a while. He didn't create Adam and Eve. He created Adam and let him go. And it was later that he came along and said, it's not good for that guy to be by himself. So maybe I better put a woman down there. But initially, there was no opportunity for Adam to reproduce if we're going solely with the I'm the only man on earth story.
Right. And I do believe that in the beginning, he was the only human at that time, except for the pre-Adamites that were also around at that time, because Earth actually had an angelic civilization on it that predates Adam and Eve.
Okay, and where do you come by that?
So you want to look it up, read and meditate on Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. So there's some really awesome nuggets in there. And something else you got to keep in mind is the law of what they call the law of double reference. And I talk about this in my book. It's a theological concept. It basically refers to prophecy having this echoing attribute to it. Whenever you have a major prophecy, there's echoes to it throughout history. And it's on many levels. I could just go on and on. You could write a book about the law of double reference, but in those two passages, they start out talking about a particular person, a king, right? In Isaiah, he's talking about Syria, and it's the king of Tyre in Ezekiel. And you're reading it, and you're kind of going along and like, yeah, okay, this is about this king. And then suddenly he jumps back into an ancient time period, and he starts talking about Lucifer before he sinned. And it's because there's so many parallels between what happened with Lucifer and the way his kingdom went. And he became proud and big-headed, full of himself, and ended up rebelling. And then he was defeated, and his kingdom was defeated. So in both of those prophecies, in both of those scriptures, it talks about Lucifer's ancient kingdom. So you read about Ezekiel, it says, when he was a glorified being, he was in the garden of God in Eden. That's on earth. And he was a king because he says he had a throne. If you're a king and you got a throne, you're not going to just be a king by yourself. The whole point of a king is to have a kingdom with subjects. Mm-hmm. Lucifer was an angel. He had an angelic kingdom. He ruled from Adam and, from the Garden of Eden. His kingdom was here on this planet. And he sinned. When he sinned, he led a rebellion against God in God's kingdom. He ascended from the Garden of Eden. It says he rose above the heights of the clouds, and then he went to the sides of the north in his attack against God's throne, which is a planet in the northern hemisphere. It's a glorified planet. And it's literally mentioned and associated with the direction of north in Psalm 75, Psalm 48, and Isaiah 14, the far reaches of the north, where God's throne literally, physically is. Now, is it in this dimension? That's a whole nother conversation about dimensions. A lot of people think heaven is outside of time space altogether, but it's not. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's multiverse. That's earth and its heavens, as in outer space, the word Shamim, referring to the sun and the moon and the stars, the abode of the sun and the moon and the stars, defined in Genesis 1:14. Most instances refer to that, and that's the second heaven. First heaven is here on earth in the upper atmosphere. And third heaven is where God's throne is at, and every description of it matches that of a glorified planet in a higher dimension, inaccessible to fallen beings unless God specifically allows them there, which he has allowed Lucifer there, Satan there. on occasion for councils, which is documented in the book of Job, where he comes before God's throne to present accusations.
Yeah.
So this is God's actual throne. That's the highest heaven. It's a glorified planet. Outer space is the heavens. And the word angel, for example, is stars. The stars of God means it's a reference directly linking angels to stars. And angels aren't the only thing in the heaven. The Bible refers to the hosts of heaven. That literally means life forms in outer space, that phrase, the host of heaven. And there's a number of other scriptures that talk about life in the heavens, life in outer space. So what I've done in my book is I've categorized, like I broke down what's heaven actually, what's hell actually. So what are the locations of reality that we're talking about here? And I've also broken down the entities. For example, by definition, I believe all angels are aliens, but not all aliens are angels, because angels are a specific definition that requires immortality. And, they have this attribute of immortality. They're extremely powerful, right? They could be faithful or fallen, but they're immortal. I mean, Jesus defined them as that. They're not supposed to have sex. The fallen ones do or have, but they're not supposed to by their nature, their higher nature that they're translated into. So that said, I believe the cosmos is populated with faithful and fallen angels, but they're also populated with beings that are like Adam and Eve were, reproducing after their own kind. Some have never sinned. I think that those in that category would probably be more reliant on technology, and there's probably some glorified angels that are so powerful they don't need technology that much. But in most cases, angels are associated with chariots. And the whole notion of a chariot looking like an actual chariot, with wheels, why would a chariot have wheels if it doesn't need them? It's floating in the sky. It has propulsion that is beyond a horse, and it's beyond the need for a wheel, which is designed for gravity on the ground, right? It's not like God sprinkled reindeer dust like Santa's sleigh to make some horses and a chariot fly. I mean, erase that.
Yeah.
It's more in line with the idea that the word chariot was used in a generic sense to refer to a vehicle that angels were associated with. In 2 Kings, this chariot of Israel literally pulls Elijah up off the ground in a whirlwind. So he, in a beam, tractor beam, pulls them up in, and they go off to heaven. You also see in Ezekiel chapter 1 and 10, you have a description of wheels within wheels. This could be a concentric discs that turned on the side. You would see a series of wheels. Flipped sideways, it would look like it has wings that are straight, that don't flap. And that's literally what the scriptures say. It says that the wings are straight, they do not move. And the wings above and the wings below connect on the distant ends, like a saucer. That's the description. And it has a dome on top, and above it is the Merkaba, God's portable throne. Now, what do I think that is? They actually see God above this contraption. I think if it's going to be an intergalactic, interdimensional vehicle, it's going to have the ability to create wormholes. It has to. That's its mode of travel. That's how it can go so far so quick. And if it's capable of creating wormholes, it could create a wormhole and show you God's throne right there. So if you're looking at this thing, then these angels can use their technology and boom, open this portal up, and you're looking through God to God's throne. Now, a lot of Christians have a hard time with wrapping their head around God, angels, technology, but it's very simple. There's a word I would like you to look up. It's called kenosis. It's the fact that God, when he became a human, he laid the laid aside his divinity, his divine power, and he became a human being. He couldn't have been able to do what he did. He would have never gotten tired. He would have never went to sleep. He wouldn't have to eat. He couldn't have died on the cross if he wasn't fully human.
Right.
He was fully human and fully God. But the concept to grasp here is the fact that God has a history with setting aside his divinity and his power for different reasons. And I think it has to do with his intimacy. He created us because he wants to be intimate with us. He wants us to be part of his family. He likes to hang out with us. God the Father is outside of time space altogether. The Son is his body that he created to be in time space with us. And so all of those visions of God in the Old Testament, those are Jesus.
Right.
In
The
his
prophecies.
pre-incarnate form. And I honestly believe that as the firstborn of all creation, when God spoke him into existence in Mary's womb, that he was the firstborn of all creation. And that after he died, resurrected, and went into heaven, that he traveled back in time before all life existed and started creating life after that, because he had a body at that point.
Well, there
And
was
it was
there
that
was a very
body.
interesting aspect of time that I've always found in some of Jesus's words. When they talk about, were you before Abraham? Or basically, he comes out and he
Yes.
says, before Abraham was, I am.
I am.
Which
Yes.
gives you this whole, time at one place and one time kind of
him,
concept, which is
yes.
pretty advanced for a 2,300-year-old civilization.
Yes. There's others too. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the end, the first and the last, the Ancient of Days. So I believe when he first entered time space, think about this. God created Adam and Eve with his hands. He had to have a body to do that. So I'm like thinking, okay, did God just create a temporary body in the pre-incarnate? Well, why would he have to? Why couldn't he have his body that he had when he was born through Mary and then travel back in time before any of that existed? Because now he has a body in time space and time is his. He could do whatever he wants with it. And he's got a body and he goes back as the firstborn of all creation and starts creating all other life. Who knows how much longer, millions, billions years later, he finally creates Earth and populates it with life. Well, actually, Earth was created and populated with life a long time ago, and that was Lucifer's kingdom. And Earth is significant because the rebellion started on Earth from Lucifer. That's why God said, out of all the planets of all creation, where I'm going to actually come and incarnate myself as a human being with a body in this physical universe and time space, I'm going to do it on this planet because the rebellion started on this planet. So he's going to end the rebellion on this planet. And he died on the cross. He won. He defeated Satan on the cross. And then he's going to come back and he's going to move his kingdom, his capital of all creation from planet heaven where it's at. New Jerusalem's going to be transported to earth, as it talks about in Revelation 21. So, interesting tidbit. How are you going to transport a non-physical city to a physical planet? Or, it's because it's on a physical planet right now, dimensionally shifted. And Earth in the future, when it goes through this, it's going to increase in glory, and then God's going to transport New Jerusalem to Earth. And then at the very tail end of the Bible, most likely this entire Middle Earth is what I call it right now, because hell is in the center of the earth, in the heart of the earth. It's a smaller planet. First heaven is a larger planet, and we're Middle Earth, literally, like, maybe J.R. Tolkien had an idea of that, and that's why he called it Middle Earth, because it's in the middle. It's between first heaven and hell, the underworld below. But Earth is an onion of lithospheres with all these levels of existence to it. And they're all dimensionally shifted from each other. They are all composed of a type of matter. They're all composed of atoms that vibrate at a particular frequency. So angels, they're able to change their atomic structure and pop in and out of this reality. They're not native to this reality. They don't vibrate at this frequency, but just like you can hold your breath and jump into a swimming pool and swim underwater, an angel can pop in and out of this dimension. You're not native here, they can do it. And that's how I understand it, kind of with this quantum physics string theory explanation to it.
So we got a question, John, from the chat. Michael is asking, as far as your study, did you compare different forms of Christianity in your study of all of this? Because you've got what the Catholics teach, you've got the Orthodox, you got Protestants, and various different translations, King James, NIV, New American Standard, all of these things. And a lot of times when people are talking about interpreting things, there's a need to go back to the Koine Greek, as far as when you talk about the New Testament.
Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Latin.
Yeah.
I studied all those.
So all of this stuff. So you're going back to the original form of the language, as it's been documented in whatever copies that are out there. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, and in the areas where I did linguistic studies, I actually put the words. I used Strong's Enhanced Lexicon, like the 3 definitions for heaven, for example. That you can just get eSword, for example. That's an awesome resource.
Yeah.
Download all. I have 30 different versions of the Bible in there, but I also have all these different commentaries and the lexicon and stuff like that. And I really dug into it, and you could find some really fascinating things by digging into the words. The word Nephilim, for example, was mistranslated when it went into Greek. Technically, the Greeks translated Nephilim as giant. Kind of a mistranslation, but they literally were giants, which you can gather from the context of other scriptures. So it works. The word is similar. In Hebrew, it's actually fallen one. Nephilim means fallen ones. But it's very close to the word for giant in Greek. And they said, well, they were giants, they said, oh, they're like, we're like grasshoppers compared to them. And, said King Og was 9.5 feet tall, his bed, and gave the dimensions of Goliath. So we had literal giants, 6 fingers, 6 toes. They were freaks. Not all of them were giants, though. They were men of renown. And then you read, I did studies in other religions as well. And you read the, here's where the ancient aliens and I really diverge. The people in the ancient alien camp, they always hammer this, there's no such, they want to quote from the Bible a lot, and then extract God, right? Oh, no, that Elohim, that's a race of angels, no. The same God, just a couple of, Genesis 2:7 says God made Adam and Eve from the dust of the earth. They throw that in the trash. They say angels, ETs planted us here. We're seated. Panspermia. It's not a new teaching. It comes back from ancient Greek, right? And they're just reviving it and revising it and putting a new skin on it. But it's the same deception that the Watchers came with a long time ago. They want to assume God's role. They want to take his place. They want our worship. They want to demote God and promote humanity and themselves and replace God and take God out of the picture. And they're still doing it with shows like that. And Jesus literally said in Matthew 24 and Luke 17, in the end times, when I return, it will be like the days of Noah. So he literally singled out the days of Noah out of all of history. And he said, in the coming of the coming of the Son of Man will be as the days of Noah. Right. And, and then he also throws in Sodom and Gomorrah. It'll be like that, too. Well, you read about Sodom and Gomorrah. How did those people act when the angels went in? They wanted to have sex with them immediately, as if they had experience with, encounters with otherworldly characters like this. And it refers to their lustful desires as wanting to have relations with other flesh. The word there for other means like another type of flesh. Right. And that is right in the epicenter of where these Nephilim were going on, where they were populating, right there where that area was in the promised land. And these angels didn't pick this area in Canaan by accident. They knew this was going to be God's prophesied promised land. So that's why they populated the area in the first place, to take it over, preemptively attack this area and take it over. And so God sent the Israelites in there to purge them out, and he empowered them to do it supernaturally.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of things here that derive from assumptions, and I get it. You're studying scripture, you're studying the original words, but there's a good bit of this that's not in scripture. You're having to extrapolate various different things that's based on, okay, this piece here, this piece here, this piece here. How do you put all of this together and have such certainty that this is actually the way it is? Because I imagine that you've probably had conversations with other people before who have looked at this and go, "Oh, come on, John, that's not in the scripture." You know, there are pieces of it that you could probably interpret certain ways.
Inferred, yeah. It's not explicit in some areas, but it's inferred. You can put pieces of the puzzle together. And I know that there's like professors in universities that'll really dig into this and say, no, he's wrong on this, he's wrong on that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm fine with that. I had arguments with Michael Heiser, Dr. Heiser. I critiqued some of his work, he critiqued some of mine. And then like one area where we diverged was the definition of Elohim, which I believe is an Old Testament reference to the Trinity. It's God's plural word. God is plural. Makes sense to me. And he had some couple of paragraphs to explain why that can't be the case. I think it's a lot more simple than that. God has a triune nature. Why not use a plural word? Simple.
Right.
But he had lots of theological overhead unpack and say, no, it's the Godhead and the angels and blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, well, what you're saying almost makes it sound like you're agreeing with these ancient astronaut guys that ETs created humanity. And that's not the case. ETs didn't create all of time and space. God did that. Only God can create time and space. Only God can exist outside of time and space altogether. No ET can claim that. And, maybe they have the math and the power and the technology to even bounce back and forth in time. I don't know. But they can't get out of time altogether. They can't. It's impossible for them. There's immutable attributes that God has that ETs can't claim. And that's where I differ with the ancient astronaut camp. I believe God created humanity, as the Bible says, and that they want to attack Revelation and invalidate it and tweak around on it until it isn't Revelation or, Genesis or Revelation, Satan hates two books the most out of all the Bible, Genesis and Revelation. In Genesis, his sentence is pronounced. In Revelation, it's executed. And so he is doing everything he can to invalidate those two books and everything else in the middle, but especially Genesis and Revelation. And the very first thing he wants to destroy is God's identity. Let's strip God of his identity. Let's emote him. Let's get him out. Let's extract him from the Bible. He's not in the picture, period.
Okay.
And
so if there's so many of these creatures of aliens and angels who are aliens and
innumerable.
aliens who are not angels, why are they all sneaking around, not letting us see them except for this guy over here sometimes, but he's got no proof, or this lady over here who's got a vision of it, but she's got no photographs and nothing. Why aren't they just coming out and saying, hey, you guys all got it wrong, you just follow us, whether they're lying to us or not? Why don't they just come forward?
It's a complicated question, honestly. It gets into the dynamics of the heavens and the relationship that we have. First of all, in first heaven, it defines the national boundaries of this world according to the angels that dwell in the first heaven. That's in Deuteronomy 32:8. God divided the peoples of the world up according to the sons of Israel, which dwell in that realm. And in Daniel chapter 12, it states that the archangel Michael is specifically above the region of Israel. Sort of an explanation as to why that little country exists now, how they came back after 2,000 years of not existing, and then are managing to stay there in spite of being surrounded by hostility. But that whole definition is just right there in Scripture. And when you put it together, you think of the first heaven. I mean, I could see this as clear as day in my mind as I'm reading it in scripture, because the Bible reads like Star Wars to me, and I see all of these political dynamics and stuff. And there's other scriptures, like Second Thessalonian talks about a restrainer. The Antichrist can't be revealed until the restrainer is taken out of the way. So there's a power here that's on the earth. It's preventing evil from like just coming in and completely taking over, or, having their way. It's a timing issue. And so God has all these things put in place to prevent his timeline from being messed up. He wants things to happen in a specific order, in a specific way, and he will only allow certain things to happen until certain barriers are breached or until certain events happen. I think the rapture of the church is a trigger point at which the restrainer, that's the restrainer. We, the body of Christ, are restraining all of these evil powers from coming in completely and having unbridled access into this world. When we are removed in the rapture, and I know that there's all kinds of theological arguments about that. The word rapture is not in the Bible.
Right.
It is. If you read in the Latin, it's there. Taken up translates rapturos. So there's all of these theological things, but I kind of just cut past all of that. And here's why. I think we're quickly approaching a time when Christians are going to be facing a reality that they can't explain because they have no frame of reference. Theologically, they're stuck picking at words and trying to prove certain things, and that certain things don't add up, certain things don't make sense. And I am showing an interpretation of Scripture in which to view these things, and it makes perfect sense. And in fact, now I believe ETs are real even more because of the Bible. And movies like Star Wars are actually incredibly prophetic. There really is Star Wars out there. It predates humanity. It's coming to its conclusion here on Earth. And you read books like, Daniel chapter 8, it's talking about otherworldly beings being pulled down to Earth and manifesting in this world in these end times battle type scenarios. You read about Revelation 12:4, where it says the dragon dragged a third of the stars from the sky. That's another reference to angels, by the way. Angels and stars, one and the same. And he's dragging these fallen angel beings and pulling them into the battles going on down here on Earth. So we're going to see otherworldly alliances with different nations around the world. And I think that dynamic is in place right now. Earth is connected with some ETs. We may even have multiple factions of ETs within different branches of our government or military. I've read books that talk about the ETs with the Navy are the good guys. The ETs with the Air Force are the bad guys, and it's like, really? But, I don't know about all those details. I just sort of just catalog it and say maybe, because it lines up with Daniel chapter 8 and in Revelation, where you see these otherworldly powers, and then Jesus, when he's prophesying about the end times, the powers of the heavens will be shaken and we will return to the days of Noah. And then when you read in Genesis chapter 6, what were the days of Noah? And then, of course, Enoch is the abridged version of Genesis 6 in great detail. They descended to Mount Horeb. They integrated with human society. They taught them all this knowledge and technology, and then human society just totally exploded in terms of their advancement. It just like went from the dark ages to suddenly, doing all of this crazy advanced stuff. And they were probably working with anti-gravity technology and stuff back then to create, move these stones and all of that.
So I hear you mention Enoch. I'm assuming then that you're pulling some of this from some of the Apocrypha?
The Book of Enoch in particular, yes. That actually missed inclusion from the Bible in the vote in the Council of Nicaea by a single vote. And it is referenced in the Book of Jude. So that one, I think, carries enough weight. It was a terrible mistake to remove it. There's other books, the Book of Jasher, for example, and it talks about these Nephilim, these hybrids. I've done enough research to pretty much declare with, strong certainty the early church believed that these angelic beings, the B'nai Elohim, were literally, otherworldly beings separate from Earth, and that they populated society, that the Nephilim were hybrids, angel-human hybrids. the book of Jasher actually talks about them being angel-animal hybrids also. And if you look at other ancient legends and stuff like the Greek mythologies and stuff, these beings had the ability to shapeshift. They could turn into animals and mate with animals, and they did. And then the animals actually, they had glorified DNA, so they would actually have, reproductive results, but they were like abominations. They were these evil things.
Centaurs and
Here's another interesting tidbit about the etymology aspect of some of these Hebrew words. The word Nephilim, the word Raphaim. So the same thing translated as giant, but look into the Greeks. Look in the lexicon. What is it? It's the main lexicon that tells you the definitions of these words, and Raphaim translates as shades and spirits and also giants. So if you ever wondered, where do demons come from? Why would God create such a thing? God created angels. Angels sinned and fell. But angels are not demons, because angels cannot die, according to Luke 20:36. They also have physical bodies, so they don't really need to possess somebody. A demon, on the other hand, is a non-physical being, a demon/devil, same word. They are looking for hosts. They want a body because they used to have one. The word Raphaim means giant or fallen one, and it also translates as shade or spirit. So demons are the ghosts of the Nephilim. That's what they are, and that's where they came from.
All right,
you learn all that just from studying the word.
Yeah, we have this comment from Wave of Mutilation. The Bible isn't supposed to be taken literally, not least because it contradicts itself. I would argue, and I have argued, and I've actually taught Bible class on this point. The Bible doesn't contradict itself. The Bible interprets itself. The Bible teaches three ways. You have direct direct command, example, and inference, and we can infer from certain things. And this sounds like this is the method that you're using a lot, John, in interpreting certain things. So the structure of your book, because we've got here. Let me pull this up and see if this is actually going to look good, because we're kind of in a weird place here. All right, so how exactly do you lay this? I'm assuming that you lay all this out in the book in a certain particular order, right? How familiar do people need to be with the Bible in order to go through all of this and say, okay, yeah, that tracks, that doesn't make sense, this, okay, I understand this. How much biblical knowledge needs to be in place for somebody to read this book?
You don't need to know the Bible at all to read this book. I actually give the scriptures, and I actually include the references all throughout. And then, of course, if you wanted to dig a little deeper, there are some places in here where I just give the scripture. So it would help if you had a Bible on hand, but you don't necessarily have to have one with you to read it. And I lay out exactly where I'm connecting these dots and how I put them together. And I also put down, look, I'm making an inference here. And in some cases, I'm like, you know what? I could be wrong about this. However, consider these three facts, and I'm not going to be like incredibly dogmatic and say, I know that I'm right and blah, blah, blah. Right. There's only a few really basic things that I will do a foot stomp on. And like, those are like core Christian concepts, like the identity of God, right? God being the creator of all time, space, and all life within it. That doesn't mean that angels can't tweak our DNA. They have. They've done all kinds of things to us. And I think that the Bible actually even gives you a clue as to what they're working on. I think that they're working on a master avatar. They want to create They want the Antichrist. We know that. They want this master Antichrist figure. Not to say that he's the only one. There's many Antichrists. But they want to have a granddaddy of them all, right? The grand capstone achievement. And so what are they doing? They're monkeying around with our genetics. They're learning everything that they can about our genome so they can create a human. He will probably be a Nephilim. I think he will have otherworldly connections, and that would make him godlike, just like the
But
Epic
gosh,
of
John, I mean,
Gilgamesh.
if they were trying to mess with our mRNA, you would think there'd be news stories all over the place about. Oh, wait, never mind. I'll back off of that one.
All right, John. Let me
Uh-oh.
ask you this. All right, because you're allowing for the possibility that you could be wrong. You're in some
Oh, sure.
instances. You're
And
saying,
I'll definitely debate anybody. I've debated people before. Yeah.
here's the question for me. If you are wrong, let's assume for just a second that you have made assumptions and you've looked at all of this and you've completely gotten everything wrong. How does that then track? Because now then, if you are wrong and you're preaching this, not necessarily preaching it, but you're evangelizing this particular interpretation. If you're wrong, then you're preaching a false doctrine. Does that concern you at all? Do you ever sit and think, well, wait a minute, if I'm wrong, I'm leading people astray, which is kind of against the whole point of Christianity in the first place? Do you ever worry about that?
First, no, not at all. First of all, there's degrees of wrong. I'm not going to be entirely wrong because I'm straight up quoting the Bible that I believe in. Okay. You're always going to have people who disagree with each other. But in my mission statement, I put it on my website that one of the things that bugs me is you could write about the most horrible, immoral, wretched, or meaningless things day and night, people leave you alone. Mm-hmm. The second you tiptoe near the Bible to speak anything out of it, you're going to have people who don't believe it detracting you. And then you're going to have these people that are on, maybe a bit on the legalistic side, and they like to throw out these words. They don't just critique you and say that you're wrong. They say to you that you're a heretic, that you're leading people to hell, that you're an abomination. The words and descriptions that they use, it's like they lay awake at night thinking of new ways to say that what you're saying is not just wrong. It's
blasphemer.
It's going to throw you into hell for eternity, and you'll be burning with the deepest, darkest demons of them all because you're the worst of the worst. And it's like, what's in your heart doesn't even matter, right? The fact that you're looking at the Bible and you're trying to present information that is hard to wrap your head around, but you're trying, and you're saying, what if it means this? And what if it means that? I'm not saying it necessarily is, but I'm saying, what if this? And you know what? If you're presented with something in the future, like an archaeological finding of an ancient relic that's incredibly advanced technology, for example, which I believe is going to happen, probably already has happened, or outer space really is populated with life. You're going to question it, or you're going to actually get on a vehicle and travel there because they'll have the technology to do it. And there's these beings that are clearly otherworldly beings in our skies and whatnot. At some point, you're going to come to a realization that, you know what, maybe I need to take another look at the Bible and consider how I'm interpreting it on really hard points that are not even there in some respects. Some people.
But your research is really looking more at events in the Bible and related stories from the Bible. I don't think that you're coming out with a hey, the plan of salvation really means this kind of thing, to where you would alter the gospel.
Not the core. And that's honestly that's why I put my mission statement on the Bible, or on my beliefs. I have a section on my website where I'm like, you want to know what kind of a Christian I am and the fundamentals that I believe in? Check this out. And I pretty much enumerate evangelical statement of faith. And, there's just a lot of key core Christian principles that I will not waffle on. Salvation comes through Jesus only. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And the cool thing about this whole subject matter and what I feel I'm on the mission right now of the angel in Revelation 14, 6 and 7. This angel is reminding people in the middle of end times events, when you got beast and the mark of the beast and the Antichrist and the false prophet and all of this stuff going on in Revelation 13, and all this end time stuff is happening, and right there in the middle of it, next chapter over, you got an angel that's preaching the gospel to people. So that and alone is interesting. Angels preaching the gospel to every tribe, every tongue, every nation. And then the angel says, really basic message: worship him who created the sun, the moon, worship him who created the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the springs of water, the creator. It's reminding everybody who the creator is. And why do I think he's doing that? It's because the things that their people of the earth are going to be exposed to are going to be so otherworldly and outlandish. It's going to take all the world religions by surprise, just like the ancient astronaut camp are predicting. Their main message is all the world religions are wrong. The ET reality is the truth. We were put here by them. We're part of the great cosmic oneness, and we're going to enter into this new age of Aquarius. That we're on the cusp of this new transhumanism evolution, right? They like to use all these words and stuff, and that's pretty much the gist of a lot of what they have to say. And it's a lie. But the reason why that lie is so effective, according to 2 Thessalonians, it's a strong delusion, and it'll be incredibly powerful deception because it has so much truth to it. The best lies are 99% true. And then they save the big whopper, like, okay, all of this stuff is actually true, but it weaves this deception, and they tell a lie with truth. And that's why I think there really is an otherworldly reality out there. There really are other worlds populated with life. There's good angels, there's bad angels. It's this complicated mix. It's like Star Wars. You got technology, and you got supernatural powers, and all of these beings, and factions warring with each other in the cosmos, and it's all going to come to a head down here on Earth. It's all true, and it's all going to happen. Yeah.
One of the signs that Jesus talks about, I think in Matthew 18 or Matthew 20, when they're saying what's it going to be like. One of the things he does relate to them is that there will be signs in the heavens. Now, is it your interpretation through this book that the increase of UFO sightings and activity is in line with that prophecy, or is that referring to some other?
I think it's
because
exactly
a lot of people
in
think
line.
it's going to be like conjunctions of planets and things like that.
Consider the fact that's practically in the same sentence with "it'll be as the days of Noah." I mean, he just mentions this, right? It'll be as the days of Noah, and then the heavens and the earth, the heavens will be shaken, right? So what was happening in the days of Noah? Otherworldly beings coming down from the heavens. It literally states that they
Eating,
descended from
drinking,
Mount.
marrying, giving in marriage.
Yeah. And everything's cool. Life is, good, and everything's happy. We're prosperous. We're doing our own thing.
Yeah, but in the days of Noah, you also had pretty much reckless abandon. Everybody was kind of doing their own thing, rejecting God, which is why the flood happened. I mean, it's not just we're all successful, everything's great, life is happy and good. It was you're all
corrupt.
You're all living in rebellion against God. You're all gonna die, except these 6 people. So as it was in the days of Noah, you could also say, we're in an age right now where there are a lot of people that are living a pretty hedonistic lifestyle. Sodom and Gomorrah and days of the flood and today are fairly similar in that respect.
Yeah, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage. I mean, it does mention that, but also we do know from context of Genesis that, that they thought about evil only, all of their thoughts were consumed with only evil constantly. That's what it says in Genesis 6:4. And that's bad. And it was so bad, it even affected the animal kingdom, I believe, because it says all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. That's why I believe that the angels actually crossed with animals too. And they corrupted the animals, and why even the animals had to be wiped out. and only select animals, just like Noah. Said Noah was pure in his generations. I think, yes, Noah was a righteous man, but he was also genetically pure. And that's what it means. Pure in his generations is a reference to his genetics. And he was taken in the ark, in his family, and then these animals. All select. I think that they were chosen for a reason, and that these animals, one of my books is about that. It's called The Gathering, and it's about God calling all of these animals all over the earth, and they went on this mass migration to this mountain. And so I think that there's an incredible story there, and that it refers to a destruction that happened to save humanity. Planet had to be quarantined pretty much. I mean, we had to eradicate all of this corruption. But then it comes back, even after the flood. Oh. And if all the people that are in the ark are pure, where did thes Nephilim come from again? I heard people say, that there was one clinging to the boat. They have different theories, right?
They were giants. They stood above the water.
The Canaanite theory, right? Or the Sethite theory and whatnot. But I don't follow that. I don't think the early church believed that. I believe that all of the Nephilim were wiped out, but then these otherworldly visitors came back after the flood. And what do you see right there immediately after? A couple chapters away, Genesis chapter 11, you see this guy Nimrod. And when you read the biblical narrative, it's kind of like this high-level overview of, okay, there's these people that are consolidating in this big city. Maybe they got a little big-headed. They created this tower, right? And then God says, well, if they've done this now, eventually it's going to be nothing they won't be restrained, right? And so we got to slow this down. Let's scramble their language and spread them out. And so I think God actually commissions angels. He delegates. And that's where a lot of this ancient astronaut confusion comes from. It is God, but angels are limited. God is not. And God delegates to angels. Angels can use technology. So these ancient astronaut people, they see this column of fire and a cloud of day and column at night above Israel, and they feed in Israel, and they're splitting the Red Sea and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, that's obviously, ETs. I don't think that's wrong. I think they are ETs, but they're delegated directly from God. And, you read about God actually creating this sort of landing port on the top of Mount Sinai, this sapphire pavement or, emerald pavement. And he eats dinner with them on the top of Mount Sinai. 70-something elders up there eating dinner with God. It sounds like he created a place where his ship comes and it lands. And, Moses went in the ship with him, was given a tour. And that all, I totally jive with that. And that God was there with angels.
I find it interesting that Nimrod was described in the Bible. And people remember, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And you're thinking, oh, he was, this mighty hunter.
Sounds like a good guy.
Hey, you're a pretty good hunter. But the translation was actually more like he was a mighty hunter faster than God. And it was basically he was preaching the Baal. And he was getting more followers to Baal faster than Judaism was growing. And that was one of the reasons why, I've heard that, the whole Tower of Babel had to be stopped. Nimrod had to be stopped because this philosophy is going to get out ahead of things, and it's not my plan.
So here's a few other things. Nimrod actually translates in Hebrew as rebel. So he was rebelling. The Epic of Gilgamesh is the Sumerian account of Genesis 11. The Epic of Gilgamesh is about a guy who was a king. His mother was 2/3 God. So this king was Nephilim. So Nimrod was probably a Nephilim. Was he a giant? Not necessarily, but he was a man of renown, and Genesis 6:4 says, that these Nephilim were men of renown. And the Epic of Gilgamesh says why he was building a tower. He was mad at the God who brought the flood. They had a different name for him. These are the Anunnaki and all of that. And the ancient alien crowd, they really go off on the Anunnaki and they're following it. But you gotta understand too that the Anunnaki had their perspective, right? So they talk about the flood and all of that, but they talk about it from their perspective. They say God is not a good guy. he brought a flood and wiped them out. And so he built this tower. So if God ever brings another flood, it's his way of saying, well, I'll just go up on my tower and chill out on my recliner while all the flood waters go around me, and I'll survive the flood because our tower is going to be able to survive it. And then I found some other interesting tidbits in the research indicating that the people there, their technology may have been spiritual in nature, like sorcery and stuff. They might have learned how to astral project. There's translations of the structure there refer to it as the gate of God, gate of the gods. So it seems to be like that tower might have served as some kind of a gateway as well into the heavens. And that this area was advancing so rapidly because they, again, connected with otherworldly beings. The fact that Nimrod's mother was part angelic is another indicator of that they had these otherworldly connections. There was Nephilim activity going on there. It was an epicenter of this. And the tower is just a symbol of their defiance against God. I mean, God wanted to bring back another flood, he would have, but he already promised he wouldn't. And, so he's just like, oh, let's just confuse the tar out of them, make them wake up the next day and nobody understand anybody. And the idea, too, is that these people were probably not very respectful people, because what do? They end up all breaking up into different factions and then going off separate ways. Obviously, they couldn't stand each other. They didn't have enough patience or love for each other to stick around in the same spot and try to learn each other's languages. No, they all just said, screw you guys. And they all split off and went into different camps and just took off and spread out all over the world. So I think that, when you could take some of these other ancient texts from other religions and stuff, you use your Bible as the baseline. Like, okay, here's what happened. Now, what else can I glean from this? Was Nimrod a Nephilim? Probably. His name means rebel. The word Nephilim means fallen one. So I don't think that's too much of a stretch to speculate that, yes, he probably was a Nephilim. They probably did have Nephilim activity there. And that backstory gathered from the Sumerians gives you a little bit more information as to what happened there and the things that went down. It makes a lot more sense to me. It complements it. Am I going to hammer my stake in the ground and call somebody a heretic if they don't follow what I'm saying? No. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
No.
And that's what I like. When I interpret scripture, I like to just open up possibilities for discussion. I think that's what the early church did. I think that's what the synagogue forum was for. They would go, they would read the scrolls, they would talk about things. They would have disagreements. The councils, the early councils, the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Trent, they did the same thing. Is this official canon? Oh, I don't know. This book of Enoch is kind of questionable. It gives me the creeps to suggest that these angels are mating with humans. They were on the fence, right? One vote. Yeah, it'll have some authority still, but we're going to put it aside. And then here you have the Ethiopian church. They still have the book of Enoch. They're like, yeah, we're going to put it back in. It's too close. So that's where I'm at in terms of being a Christian and just doing my best to interpret what I read in Scripture.
All right. Well, the book is Christian Ufology, and this is out now, right, John? This is currently available. Okay.
And in fact, as a promotional for your show, if anybody wants to email me, my email is jmilor, same as my last name, jmilor@yahoo.com. My website, johnmilor.com. I'll email them a free copy, PDF copy. And, that goes for all of my books. I email out copies to anybody who, I'm not sure about this book, or I'm kind of broke right now. Could you just hook me up with a copy? Fine. I'll email you a copy. Just email me and request it. And I also ask that, if you read it and you like it, if you felt, blessed by it, give me a review on it. I spend a lot of money on marketing, and as an author, I'm essentially a failure if you're looking at finances, because I've lost a lot of money trying to market, and I'm totally in the hole. So don't make any money
Oh,
writing books.
RJ and I know all about not making any money, right?
About not making- we're experts at it. Pros.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
John is also on YouTube and Instagram. He's got a Facebook link but that's his personal page. So
I got an
hesitant.
author page.
Is there an author
also.
page? Okay, I will look for that then,
Yeah.
and we'll add these links in the show
And LinkedIn.
notes.
Yeah. I have a lot of information on LinkedIn as well.
All right. So John, what are you working on next? Where do you go after this?
I'm trying to rewrite one of my earlier books. Because when I started writing over 20 years ago, my first book was called Apparition, and I think it's a great story, plot, the devices, the characters, but my writing back then wasn't so good.
Yeah.
I was just getting warmed up, right? And so I cranked out this book and I published it, self-published it, paid a fortune, and I maybe sold 2 or 3 copies, all these years. But I'm like, I think I could make a much, much better book. So I'm working on rewriting that, and I'm also focusing on doing lots of podcasts and stuff like this, because honestly, my passion is just to get the message out and to speak the word. The cool thing about the content of this genre is it allows a Christian to go into all of these non-Christian forums, and it's really awesome. I mean, I have these people, a lot of people, they're New Agers, they're ancient astronaut theorists and stuff. And then my perspective is intriguing to them because I like to throw in Revelation, don't you think it's interesting that the Bible predicted AI over 2,000 years ago? Revelation 13, the image of the beast, a man-made sentient entity that is put in charge of global commerce. And what are we seeing now? We're seeing the internet, we're seeing cell phones, global tracking, we're seeing digital currency, we're seeing, well, I could mention some other things, but I don't want this video to be nuked. So let's just say a lot of what we see in Revelation is actually happening now.
Yeah.
And more is going to happen. And where my research is different is I'm going to tell people exactly what I think is going to happen in the future. So if I am accurate at all, I think there will be public disclosure. I think that ETs will become part of our everyday life. They'll integrate with us. And I think that we're going to find archaeological relics that show there was an ancient civilization here, very advanced. I believe that ET life will become a reality that will be provable. I was saying this over 20 years ago, and now what are we seeing? We're seeing whistleblowers come forward and confirm these non-humanoid biologics and other things. So that's where I think I kind of have an edge in terms of the prophetic element. So, and I'm also willing to say, okay, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Fine, throw the book out. But if it's right, if you start to continue to see things lining up and happening, then it's a nice book to have on the shelf.
Well, it is certainly an interesting theory. I will give you that. And you're right. There's a lot of it, that's subject to interpretation, and some people say, this all makes sense, and some people won't. You've got a very relaxed posture about it. I'll say that, Sean. You're doing good.
No, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. In fact, I'd lose sleep if I didn't do what I'm doing. I feel that my mind was opened up. I think that the Lord has given me something. People are welcome to call me crazy, say I hallucinated. That's fine. I've had hallucinations, actually. I've had sleep deprivation hallucinations before in the Army. So I know what that's like. But I seriously don't think I hallucinated Jesus telling me his name and the effect it had on me, the kind of person I was. Honestly, I freaked a lot of people out that knew me because it was like Ebenezer Scrooge waking up on Christmas morning. The dramatic change that happened to me overnight.
Yeah.
Being one kind of person and suddenly, oh, I don't do that anymore. Addictions that I had in my life suddenly just gone. No withdrawals, no nothing, just gone. Exorcisms. I mean, my house became poltergeist central. There was a war, actually. There were all kind of things creeping around my house because I messed with Ouija boards and did astral projection, experimented with that, channeling, all kinds of stuff, right? So my house was probably Swiss cheese. If you could see into the spiritual realm, you'd see all these portals opened up. And I had a friend that could actually see spirits and saw things. And there was demonic things happening in my house. I'd talk about Jesus with somebody, and then phone would start getting staticky and hang up. I'd hit redial, it'd say 666 on the dial, and it's like, what? So I went and got baptized. I know from personal experience, baptism has a link with exorcisms. Like, you have exorcism strength and authority when you get a baptism. There's something about it that flips a switch in your spirit. It turns something on, and it's like, then it's there. And things in the spirit, the enemy basically, once he sees that you believe and you firmly believe, blinders are off. He's no longer trying to hide anymore. He doesn't care. He knows that you know, and he gets in your face sometimes. I've had people manifest on me, it's like, what? So the reality of the spiritual realm just really, opened up even more so. If it wasn't open enough before I became a believer, then it opened up in another way, and I saw all this new dimensions of reality, and it changed. I was changed dramatically, and that was over 30 years ago. So that's why I believe that, what happened to me was genuine. There's fruit from it. So that's where I'm at. That's why I'm, at peace with where I am at in my relationship with God and what I'm doing here.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to come and talk to us about it. Good luck with the book. JohnMilor.com is where you can find everything. We will put links in the notes, all the different places where you can find him. John, give your email address out one more time for anybody that wants a PDF of this book.
JMILOR@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And it's on my website too. So if you just remember my name, John Milor. I also have landing pages, ChristianUFology.net, aliensinthebible.com, aliensandtheantichrist.com, thestrongdelusion.net. Those are all landing pages that go to my website.
Okay. All right. And you can find our landing pages, RJ's with their Critical Blast, various different socials. And we've got way too many of them, but you can find all of those places were for us and connect with us. Of course, we've got a Discord. RJ, I don't think you've got a Discord yet, do you?
I have a private Discord.
Okay, private. All right. So
only a couple of people in it.
So anyway, that's going to do it for us tonight. John, thanks very much for being here and sharing with us. And if stuff in your book starts to manifest and come true, I guess we'll be having another conversation here.
Oh yeah, definitely. And hopefully you guys were one of the ones that I sent all my, several of my books to. Because if you weren't, I'll totally send you several of my books.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and then if you read, or if anybody for that matter, whatever they read, I am always up to debate. I'm always up to discuss things. If somebody else has a countering point, I love civil debate. I don't love debate where people are calling me a heretic. That I'm not really too happy to debate with somebody like that, because they've clearly already made up their mind. But if somebody really wishes to try to win me over, respectfully, hey, I am 100% on board with that, and I can't tell you how much I've learned, because I could tell you my book, Aliens in the Bible, and the book that followed, Aliens and the Antichrist, I changed my views on some stuff. Some people convinced me some things. And so I literally went back and I said, I used to think this, now I think this, and here's the points why. Oh. And so I think any learning, rational, and honestly intellectual person needs to do that.
Well, it's all about finding the truth, discerning truth. So, so I wish you well on your search. We'll definitely follow up. We'll have, but yeah, if you want to send us those copies, we'll take a look and we'll see what happens in the end times. Right?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, John. Thanks very much, and thanks everybody for you being here as well. And we will do this again. We got a couple of others lined up. We just got to get dates on them. But we'll do this again. RJ, thanks for setting this up.
Glad to be here. Glad to do it again. This is always fun. I get different perspectives from people, and I'm coming to the idea that they're all right. That it's this dodecahedron of an idea, and everyone's seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight, folks. Thanks very much for being here. If you are not yet subscribed to either of our channels, please consider it. We're also over on Odyssey and Rumble, so you can find us over there as well. And we will be back to do this again soon. Thanks, and have a good night, everybody.